Okay. All right, so let's get started now. These are the usual rules. I don't think anybody here needs to know them. So I'm going to just move to the next slide. Um, so we have at the beginning of the seventh session of this seminar, I should say that we launched this course entirely as an experimental activity just to see if there's interest in this kind of subject. And we've been so pleasantly surprised by both the amount of interest, the energy that you've brought in, and the discussions that have happened, and of course, especially the guest speaker sessions. So we're now ready to pull it all together and create this document that we said we're going to create, right? And the document is, let's say, a short 2 to 3 page letter that you, as sort of collectively representing the India of 2030, might write to yourself as a representation of India in 2020. So that's the final, the capstone of this seminar. And I just want to introduce some ideas that will help us make that synthesis happen, right? And what we call the grammar of this letter, climate grammar. And we call this climate-centric design, meaning that we want to embed engaging with climate in everything that we do, in all the systems that we want to engage with. Now, those could be systems that don't feel like climate change at all. So they could be, electoral politics. They could be social media, right? I mean, how do you insert a climate-centric way of looking at the world into everything that we do? That's sort of the challenge that we are trying to address in Socratus in general, but definitely in this course, right? So what is the goal of this session? Right. We have gone through a range of core imagination exercises. In fact, all the 6 sessions have had some kind of collective activity as part of them. And the synthesis I want to start with has sort of 3 big statements. The first one is that we don't have to solve climate change, right? So the usual way in which we address climate change is seen as, okay, here's this really big bad thing and we have to do something about it, right? So it's kind of, there is a nut out there and we want to crack that nut. And while nut cracking is a good model for many, many problems, I think for lots of wicked problems, nut cracking is a bad model. Instead of that, at least here at Socratus, we believe that we should aim for something different, which is that we want to build a new flourishing society. That's really our goal, right? It's not to solve climate change, but to build a new society in an era where climate change might be one of the reasons why we can't build a new society. So it's an obstacle to a flourishing India rather than a standalone problem that we have to solve. So the good news about India is that much of India remains to be built. Both demographically, we are a young country, but also in terms of the infrastructure that is needed, much of it doesn't exist. And that is as much mental infrastructure as physical infrastructure, right? So both the good news and the bad news is so much remains to be done. We have the great opportunity to perhaps do it in a future-proof fashion by incorporating climate change into that imagination of a new society, right? And that's what I say is, can we write a new India in the grammar of climate change? And in these kinds of challenges, design is a very, very important way of understanding the task ahead of us, right? So not the kind of design that you may be used to. Let's say if you're a social media user or a WhatsApp user, which is actually also social media, it's a kind of design that's hooking you into spending as much time as possible on the app. That's not what we want. What we want is a kind of design that makes a better world, right? So a world in which all technologies, all policies, infrastructure will take climate change into account is the kind of design that we're looking for, right? Design just is human activity that creates an artifact to better our lives. That's broadly how I'm looking at design. So climate-centric design, if it becomes the grammar of of our human and planetary system, means that, for example, if you're building a road, okay, so if you're building a road, you want to do it in such a way today that the safety of motorists is taken into account, right? Ideally. So similarly, tomorrow you want to build a road in which its impact on climate change is taken into account. And then if you're passing a law, you want to make sure that you pass the laws in such a way that it is future-proofing the capacity of underprivileged communities to respond to climate change, right? And that's sort of how climate change will be baked into all the activities that a future society will be undertaking. So it could be everyday activities like, business, governmental, bureaucracy. It could be even at something as essential as education, right? What might that society look like? That's the imagination that we are trying to inculcate here. And it has happened before, right? Meaning that there has been a massive and very important model that we know from the past that has sort of entrenched itself into everything that we do in a society. And that's, of course, democracy, right? The idea is that everything that we do in a country like India is done through and because of democratic procedures. And so the grammar of democracy is now part of everyday life in India, right? And so when I say climate-centric design, I might as well also say, what is democracy-centric design, right? Democracy-centric design is not just that you fight elections or that you shout in a morcha, kranti, 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 or something like that, but also that when we create laws that correct for past injustices, right? We prosecute people who violate the civil rights of other citizens, say caste or gender or communal violence of various kinds. You also, of course, promote free and equal relations between individuals of all backgrounds, right? So this is sort of democracy as a technology that improves people's lives. It's not perfect by any means, but it has made the world a better place for many people, right? And that kind of democracy-centric design has addressed both material distribution problems, right? Like we want to distribute, say, governmental resources in such a way that it enables flourishing. And we put principles of equality and justice into the way that that distribution is done, right? So that we can lead flourishing lives as equals. So that's sort of how democracy-centric design, you might say, helps us build a better society. So I'm saying, can we do the same thing for climate? So here is the broad, you've probably seen this before in one of the other presentations. So the basic idea is there's a wicked problem. That it might be justice, it may be climate change. It has two components. There's a moral complexity to it. There's a material complexity to it. And those are in this common space that I call a moral commons. You want a way to engage with those in a sustained fashion. And what we think, and this is why when I said we have to build a better society, right? That the solutions have to be political, right? They have to be embedded into the mechanisms of political power. Right? And that's what we call the wicked mind who solves that wicked problem. And we're hoping that through this seminar and these sessions, your minds have become more wicked. So now the question is how to make climate change part of the grammar of this future India. And again, there are two models here. One is, of course, through national policy. So it's very top down. You have international treaties through which you have national policy, and then hopefully that policy is implemented. But there can also be a bottom-up response, which is led by citizens, so people like us, and it's based on technologies and innovations that are done by startups and other organizations that are, small scale to start with. Anyway, so that's the task that this seminar was set out to address, which is that letter from 2030 to 2020. Much of that work has already happened, right? And almost everybody in this room today has been in most of those sessions. So you kind of know what you have already done. We know the mechanisms that we are now comfortable with. It's just time to pull it all together, right? And to bring this letter from 2030 to 2020 into our collective imagination. So I'm going to start the breakout today. So let's just give me one sec. So we're going to use Google Jamboard for the brainstorming session. But before I do that, let me also share. So this document is what you had prepared 3 weeks ago. So I'm going to share that in the chat window. Sorry, Chrome is a memory hog, so Zoom and Chrome at the same time. I'm just copying that link. Now let me stop sharing for a moment. So I'm going to put the link in the chat window. So this is what you guys did 3 weeks ago. It has sort of the collective imaginations in it already. And now what you need to do, let me go back to sharing my screen. Okay. And this is the Google Jamboard, which also I'm going to be sharing in the window in a second. And it can open with this link. There we go. And let's stop share. And that's there. So that's the Jamboard. So Tarini, if we can assign people into the usual 4 breakout groups, what I want you to do is in each group, take a look at the existing document and reverse engineer it, right? So, and there are 4 groups in the Jamboard already. So you can see, I'll share my screen again. Sorry, there are too many pieces of software we are trying to use. So that's the Jamboard. So each page, there's a blank page, right? So there's just group 1, 2, 3, and 4. So what I would like you guys to do, and I think that group, the Jamboard doesn't need access permissions, but if you do, please let me know. I'm just going to create this. Let's see if I can change, copy link, change to anyone with the link. All right. Anyone in the link can be an editor, and done. Okay, so everybody who's in this should be able to use that link that I just gave you. And once we are assigned into groups, so what I suggest is group 1 do their concept mapping on this page, group 2 on this page, group 3 here, and group 4 there. And that'll just be the easiest way to do it, right? And remember, we are doing it on this, like just you don't need to be literal about it. You don't have to necessarily stick to these letters that you've already written, but it gives you enough. I mean, just to jog your memory, it has plenty of stuff for you to think about, and use the Jamboard to, so for example, I'm just going to make a little mess on group 4s, but if I use a circle, this is right, and then I can add some text here and say, or something like that, right? That's all it is. So just go into this Jamboard and start imagining away. So can we have the breakouts, please?
Hello.
Hi, hello.
I just joined in. Can I be brief? What's going on?
Yeah, you. I'll just put you in a breakout room. Give me 1 second. Okay.